This is the Economic Club of Florida, a distinguished platform for discussion of the major national issues of the day. On today's program, an informative panel discussion that includes a student athlete, a lawyer, and a sports agent who share the evolving rules allowing college athletes to be paid by marketing their name, image, and likeness.
Previously, in collegiate sports, all the way up until just in the last 2 years, student athletes were not able to profit and to receive revenue for their participation in collegiate sports. Now, through legislation and some regulations, NIL was formed so that student athletes can take advantage of their branding, their own personal branding, and have some revenue based on their name, their branding, their image, their likeness as they continue to play out the collegiate sports.
Good day and welcome to the 570th in our series of distinguished speaker programs. I'm Harvey Bennett for the Economic Club of Florida. We have a very special program in store today. An engaging panel of participants joins us to share the evolving rules allowing college athletes to be paid by marketing their name, image, and likeness, a concept known by its acronym NIL, name, image, likeness. Joining us right now is the moderator of our panel, Hugh Tomlinson. He's the Director of Development and Gift Planning for the Seminole Boosters. It's the organization of great fans that supports Florida State University college athletic teams. Hugh, welcome.
Thank you very much, Harvey. Good to be with you.
Well, let's start with the basics, because this was a foreign concept to me. What exactly is NIL?
NIL is just as you stated in your opening. It's an acronym for name, image, and likeness. Previously, in collegiate sports, all the way up until just in the last year and a half, 2 years, student athletes were not able to profit and to receive revenue for their participation in collegiate sports. Now, through legislation and some regulations, NIL was formed so that student athletes can take advantage of their branding, their own personal branding, and have some revenue based on their name, their branding, their image, their likeness as they continue to play out the collegiate sports.
Just like the pro athletes do.
It's somewhat like the pros athlete. They're able to be entrepreneurial and benefit and provide support for themselves and earn some income as they go through college.
Gotcha. So as part of NIL, are college athletes actually being paid to play on their sports teams?
Technically, and I'm not an expert in NIL policy in terms of interacting directly with the rules and regulations, except that I would tell you they're not being paid to play. What they're doing is paid for the marketing of their image, the marketing of their branding, for making appearances, for making social media posts. There is a return that they're supposed to do in order to receive the benefits that they are, but it is not related to play on the field as I understand it.
With all the marketing opportunities from NIL that you and the panel will be sharing shortly, I would imagine there's a big potential economic impact here, right?
There's a huge economic impact, not just from the players themselves that now have resources that they've never had before, but it's a huge economic impact for businesses that now can use these student athletes to sponsor their products, to promote their businesses or their products on social media, to have site appearances. If you own a restaurant in town and you wanted a Florida State athlete to come in or a University of Florida athlete to come in and do an appearance, you're driving traffic to your venue. There's lots of ways that individuals and companies will monetize the ability now to have a working relationship with a student athlete. And the student athlete, in turn, again, has resources now that they put into the economy, which they've never had the ability to do before.
Gotcha. Hugh Tomlinson, Director of Development and Gift Planning for the Seminole Boosters. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We're looking forward to hearing the upcoming panel discussion of What's in a Name? Perspectives on Name, Image, and Likeness. Now, here's Club President Marion Hoffman, Vice President of Business Solutions for Indelible Business Solutions, with our formal introduction.
So if you haven't met Hugh Tomlinson, I encourage you to call his cell phone and listen to his voicemail if you need some energy, especially if you're an FSU fan, because you hear Bobby Bowden giving his cheers, and it fired me up yesterday, and I'm kind of a gator, so thank you for that. But Hugh is the Director of Development and Plan Giving at the Seminole Boosters. Many of you all might follow him on Twitter, and I am going to invite him up, and then he will introduce each of our great panelists. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I leveraged this to get my own NIL deal, and Don May has sponsored this blazer. I'm going to give him the inverse before we leave. As our panelists, please join. Ladies and gentlemen and esteemed panelists and honored guests, welcome to today's panel discussion on the most transformative topics in the world of collegiate sports: name, image, and likeness, otherwise known as NIL rights. A special thanks to Marion Hoffman, President of the Economic Club of Florida, and Holly Brooks, President of the Florida Public Relations Association, and their teams for putting the hard work together to put this little informative event together. Over the years, college athletics have witnessed a remarkable achievements, inspiring stories that unites fans and athletes alike. Today, we gather to explore the far-reaching implications of NIL rights on collegiate sports and the student athletes who make these games truly special. With the introduction of NIL legislation, student athletes now have unprecedented opportunities to capitalize on their own identities, brands, achievements, and presenting new possibilities for personal and financial growth. Throughout this discussion, we aim to shed light on the multifaceted aspects of NIL rights. We will explore the potential benefits and challenges this new paradigm presents for student athletes, collegiate sports programs, universities, and the sports industry as a whole. We will discuss the role of education and support in helping student athletes navigate the opportunities and responsibilities that come with NIL rights. This forum serves as an opportunity to gain valuable insights on our distinguished panelists who bring a diverse range of expertise and perspectives to the table. As moderator, my role is to facilitate a thoughtful and respectful exchange of ideas and hope that we emerge from this discussion with a clear understanding of the mean way of things due to the addition of NIL and the explore potential paths forward. For the sake of efficiencies and the respect for the time restraints of our panelists today and those participating, we will not be taking questions from the audience today, but we have incorporated questions that were submitted from registrations. Now let's meet our panel of experts, starting with my far left and your right. Please welcome Ben Chase, who serves as the Director of NIL Strategy for the University of Florida, who is an Orlando, Florida native, a 2014 University of Florida Warrington College of Business graduate, and a 2017 George Washington University Law graduate. Ben has been working in the NIL space since 2021 and has worked with several schools and collective and has become quite an expert in this emerging space. To his right is my friend Will Cohen, who is the Chief Operating Officer for Rising Spear, a major collective supporting student athletes at Florida State University. Will has spent the majority of his career in athletics, recently serving as the Director of Player Development for FSU's women's basketball team. He is a past athletic director and has a passion for the student-athlete experience and development. To his right is possibly the most famous person in the room. Number 51, one of my favorite people and my daughter's former teammate, Michaela Edenfield, catcher for the Florida State Seminoles Softball team. He, by the way, just recently went all the way to the finals in the 2023 Women's College World Series Championships. In addition to her impressive accolades as a softball player, Michaela has amassed quite a following on social media for her makeup tutorials. She's a sophomore from Sneads, Florida. She's majoring in business with dreams of becoming a media marketing manager for either a sports team or sportswear company. Next to Michaela is Will Hall, our second Will on the panel. Hall is an attorney at Dean Meade and practices here in Tallahassee locally. Will received his undergraduate degree at the University of Missouri Columbia and got his law degree from Florida State University. Will has various expertise in law, works with both public and private clientele, which includes serving as outside counsel to two related name, image, and likeness entities that work with intercollegiate athletes. Finally, to my immediate left is Joe Hernandez, founder and CEO of Just Win Management Group. Joe was another graduate at Florida State University. He is also a 2013 college football national champion. He was a pioneer in the NIL space who currently represents the likes of FSU quarterback Jordan Travis, FSU running back Trey Benson, along with other marketing and endorsement opportunities. He also serves as super agent to New Orleans Saints quarterback Jameis Winston. I'm going to ask each of the panelists a few individual questions and direct questions, and then go to a series of questions that each panelist can choose to chime in. For my panelists, I ask if I ask a question of one of your co-panelists, a question that you feel strongly to add for the comment to, just get my attention. We'll recognize you for a brief follow-up. Let's get started with some of the basics. Ben, can you briefly tell us how we got here with the NIL and what it allows for student athletes today that was previously prohibited?
Sure. That's a loaded question, but first I want to thank the Economic Hub of Florida and the Florida Public Relations Association for having us. How we got here, how you guys all got here, how everyone in this room got to this moment is, for the longest time, our athletes like Michaela filled the stands of Doak or Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, and you guys showed up for them, but the dollars were going to everyone else. And it came to a head with NCAA football years ago, and one of the athletes said, hey, where's my share, right? And that brought NCAA football off the map. And 2 years ago, July 1st, 2021, we became NIL. Now it's legal, right? Now it's legal for our athletes to get paid. Now it's legal for them to create jobs and be business owners. And that's a quick turnaround. And there's a lot of, negative connotations when it comes to name, image, and likeness. But hopefully today, with this lovely panel of all Florida State people, we can come together as a whole here. And they also got me on the end of the table so they could just kick me out. But yeah, that's like a very short version of it. Well, you'll learn more obviously as we open up today.
Great, thank you. All right, pass that mic because the next question is for Will Cohen. You operate one of the largest collectives in support of FSU, the Seminoles' first collective involvement. Explain to us what is a collective and what are the objectives, and briefly how do they operate?
Thank you, Hugh, and thank you everyone for being here. I'd like to first acknowledge the past chair of Seminole Boosters, who's also a founder of Rising Spear, Mr. Bob Davis. Will you give us a wave? Mm-hmm. He's a very important member to our family. So to jump into that question, there's two types of NIL we're going to discuss today. The first one is involving collectives that I'll touch on. We'll get to the brand and business version of NIL at different points in the talk. So you got to differentiate that there's two tracks going at once. So a collective is here because the NCAA had very few guardrails 2 years ago that they put out. And basically a collective is designed to pool resources. For example, we have some boosters on our board like Mr. Davis. We have an attorney, Mr. Hall. And the most important thing are phenomenal student athletes like Michaela. We have over 200 of them we've done deals with. All right, and she's just one of our top ambassadors. So our job is to pool the resources in each of our communities, whether it's in Gainesville or here, to help support our student athletes with their NIL. So that's the short story of what a collective does, because otherwise you would end up with the athletes all kind of fending for themselves. And collectively, we can raise more money, both on the nonprofit side, which we take in donations, okay? And we work with community organizations, Boys and Girls Club, the American Red Cross, the Leon County Schools, various community groups. We've done over 1,500 hours of athletes, just like Michaela, giving back to the community. All right, so our mission of Rising Spear Garnet is to collect money from donors, tax deductible, okay, and it can be allocated per sport, however that works. And then we really brighten people's day in the community. So that's half of what we do. The other half we'll get into later in the talk, where we're working with local businesses and business owners, such as many of you in the audience, to solicit NIL deals. But basically, our objective is to have a great relationship, for me specifically, a great relationship with our top athletes, our head coaches, and then members of the community. Because ultimately, in this day and age with NIL, there's also the transfer portal, and it's a different world to navigate. And ultimately, we have retained our star players are here, if that makes sense. Well, there's not been a mass exodus of people because they're unhappy with Florida State. And so that's really important. We take care of the student athletes that are here in Tallahassee. That's our priority.
Can I add to this? Yes. So to go back to the main question, what is a collective? He had a good job. First of all, the first collective was at the University of Florida, the Gator Collective. That kind of opened this up for a bunch of worms. But secondly, there's kind of a two-pronged thing here. There's the nonprofit side, like you said, where local donors, instead of contributing to maybe the university, they contribute to the collective to amplify community service and amplify the local charities. And at UF, we have Florida Victorious, and they've just finished. Our athletes just finished not only amplifying Habitat for Humanity, but building like the 77th house for the Alachua County Habitat for Humanity, and seeing that family there. And that was just two or 3 weeks ago. Coach Napier came out and spoke at it. And then on the other side, the marketing, branding side, our athletes don't have the capacity to do everything, right? So, Rising Spear, Florida Victorious, or other collectives can become marketing, advocates for these athletes. Go to a local business and say, hey, would you like to leverage the most popular people in Tallahassee or the most popular people in Gainesville and put their name next to your company? A good example of this is a local business in Gainesville had the White Star logo, but they're an apparel company. And I said, hey, have you guys thought about working in the NIL space? And he goes, I don't even know what influence marketing is. I'll tell you this, he did apparel starting in 2021 online, 400 sales up to February of 2023, 400 online orders. Since February 2023, when he started working in the NIL space, his online sales have gone up 3,000%. 3,000%. So that's because he's attaching himself to the most marketable people in Tallahassee, in Gainesville, right? So that's the power of working with the collectives and working in the marketing space, and attaching yourselves to not just influencers, but leaders like Michaela.
Thank you. We're going to talk more about marketing in a few minutes. Ben and Will have already mentioned a little bit about this, but can you tell us briefly that the different type of NIL agencies, are they nonprofit, for-profit, and do they run by the direction of the school or run independently?
Sure. So I think what Liv explained is kind of what we've seen thus far. I mean, really an NIL business can just be any type of business. There's no limit to it. There's a limit on what any type of business could be, or what its outlook could be. But normally we're seeing the collective split into either a nonprofit or a for-profit. The nonprofit, has been stated correctly, I mean, the athletes only have so much time. I mean, certainly our athletes are going to give back to the community, but with NIL just adding one more requirement on their time, what Rising Spear Garnet does is essentially buy that time and donate it to the local schools, the Boys and Girls Club. And I think our charitable sponsors have thought that was just manna from heaven, basically. On the for-profit side, Rising Spear Gold, in many ways what we try to do is, as Will said, really harness the opportunities you have for an FSU athlete here in Tallahassee, right? Or even in all the surrounding areas, right? Because I think for Joe, I mean, he's going out working on big deals for big athletes. For some of the other athletes, if someone approaches them with a deal that may be on a smaller scale, they might not be able to afford to have an agent for that. In some ways, Rising Spear kind of tries to fill Will Cowan as a registered athlete agent for that reason. So kind of tries to fill that role for them. And if you think about it, I grew up in Tallahassee. I remember, I think 1999, everyone knows Peter Ruick got in trouble for accepting, I think it was $100 pair of pants. Some tells me in 1999, Peter Warwick was worth more than $100 in Tallahassee. He probably could have owned the Dillards if he wanted to. And so now every business in Tallahassee or surrounding areas has the ability to access our athletes, use them to market their products in a way they haven't before. We just try to assist with that.
That's great. That's a great lead-in for my question for Michaela. You're the only panelist today that has NIL deals besides me and my brother. Can you share how NIL has impacted the student-athlete experience in your point of view, and what has it meant for you personally?
Okay, personally, I'm from Smedes, Florida, and if you know where that is, God bless you. It is a small town about an hour west from Tallahassee, and I'd like to think that the coaches picked the girl from Tallahassee's backyard and gave her a chance. So NIL personally wasn't a thing until 2021. Mind you, growing up, my grandpa always told me that softball will never allow me to make a living. I'll never make a living from softball, but I can have softball help me make a living. And I think the idea of that has been able to change and grow due to NIL. And I think the opportunities piece and just being able to get my foot into doors that weren't necessarily available for me at that point in time, and just being able to connect and network with people. Like my grandpa said, like, I love people, love networking with people, love talking to people. And I think just being able to talk to people and do camps and being able to give back to the community is like my biggest piece. And a lot of people don't know, but not every sport gets full rides. Softball is not like that. And we get a percentage. So somewhere the money has to be made up. And, you know, I'm from States, Florida. We don't have big accounts over there. So, and I has definitely been able to help me provide for myself and pay for my education here alongside of my softball scholarship.
Oh, that's great. Joe, as a former player prior to NIL, and one who now represents players with NIL, and just as a sports guy in general, how, in your view, has NIL rights impacted the landscape of collegiate sports? And also, NIL, how have they added to the responsibilities and pressure of a student athlete?
Thank you, first of all, everyone, for being here. And special thank you to Christopher Campbell, too, for reaching out. To answer your question, I think NIL has been such a great thing for student athletes. What gets lost in all this and hidden is the real-world experience that student athletes are getting, engaging with businesses and contractual relationships. So it's been so fascinating to see it come a long way from the point where I was in the locker room in 2013 after we beat Miami. Jameis had a speech earlier in the season where he said something about doing it big, and it was a really iconic speech he gave. And after beating Miami, we had T-shirts in every player's locker, and I believe the school was selling these shirts too that said "Do It Big" with a big Nike logo too. And a guy like him at the time couldn't earn a penny off of that. So now it's been cool to see the industry evolve and bring new opportunities to players in the community. Camps, as Michaela noted, doing prominent brand deals too, national and worldwide brands. So I just think it's awesome, and I'm really excited to see how it keeps evolving.
Thank you. Ben, are there any concerns or issues regarding current or potential disparities in NIL opportunities between like the high-profile sports of football, basketball, compared to the lesser revenue sports? And I know there's pressure to win across all programs, but how do you prioritize and provide opportunities for NIL across all the programs?
Sure, that's a good question. I would say that at UF, and this goes, I believe, probably at multiple schools, I mean, our most influential athletes are actually our gymnasts. So when it comes to true NIL influencer marketing, we have 6 gymnasts that have over 100,000 followers on Instagram. We have 0 football players that have over 100,000 followers on Instagram. We have, L'Oreal, Nike, like these deals that our athletes get. I have a presentation I showed to, during orientation, and it shows 15 national brands. And I'd say 13 of these were 13 of these were 5-figure deals, and 12 of them were with women. So when it comes to true name, image, likeness, the most powerful creators on campus when it comes to influencer marketing are our female athletes. However, in the collective space, on that side, there is there's definitely a disparity when it comes to those dollars. But that's something that it takes time to rally the right people around to invest in all sports, right? And you'd say that Paige Beckers or Living Dunn, they're the faces of women's NIL, but there's also Skylar Wallace and Michaela, right? I'll tell you, we have a gymnast at UF that sold over 10,000 handmade bows. I'll tell you, there's 0 football players at UF that have sold over 50 jerseys. So to answer your question, and the equity piece, dollars follow eyes, right? Dollars follow eyes. So if you're a company, you're going to go and invest your money in the athletes that have invested followers. At UF, we have, our gymnast team starts out every meet 90, 200 people, right? So that's electric. That's real opportunities to invest in athletes and make money off of them, and they make a piece of that. When it comes to the other side, though, there is opportunity, and that takes time by the coaches to buy in, as well as the fans and the alumni, and that's what each of these collectives, and I'm sure that we'll tag here, it takes time to find those dollars and find those opportunities for the athletes.
So get your grandkids in gymnastics. WC, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, just quickly on that, and it's part of the reason why we have a unique setup here at Tallahassee and why we have 2 different collectives, and there's a reason why we have that, because football is a monster, particularly after the year we had last year in the NIL era, and they have an entire staff, and we work very closely with the Battles End. They're great people, but the entire reason we do what we do is so Michaela doesn't wait in line to get me with the 10 football guys that need something tomorrow. And we've done deals with every softball player, every women's basketball player, every beach volleyball player to some degree. And thank you. Please do clap for that. But of our ambassadors, it's 50-50. Our Michaela, Tanaya Ladson in women's basketball, their traction in this community has been every bit that of the rebuild of men's basketball and baseball, which has gone phenomenally well. But those are the things, and that's a big reason why we do things the way we do, is that NIL is not just for the big media stars. NIL is for everyone, and we'll get into that in a moment.
Okay, Michaela, wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think it's just something that comes with time and exposure, right? I mean, you've seen it personally on the softball side. I think the more exposure that you give us, the more people are going to watch it. And I think personally, I've had a lot of people from my own community thought that I was going to sign them to go to Florida State for volleyball. And when I told them I was going for softball, they were like, what? Why? And Seeds is known for my high school volleyball program. We've won 9 consecutive state championships over there, and I was a part of 4 at my time. And I think they just didn't know anything about softball, right? Then they start to watch me because they're like, oh, she's the girl from Sneeds. She's playing at Florida State. She's a Seminole, right? And then now they see me years later at the World Series, like thousands of people watching softball, right? And we talk about like how crazy one yellow ball can bring a community together. People that did not really know who I was from Sneeds are now all supporting Sneeds Hall, and we're posting up, putting like Team 40 things on their Facebook page, and I think half of them are Gator fans. So I thought that was an accomplishment. I was like, yeah, Team 40, FSU, go Noles. I was like, wow, this is a change in the community I'd like to see. But again, it's the exposure piece, and it is going to be a time thing. I mean, we want to talk about the difference from male and female athletics, then we're putting it back in time, right? How many years have male athletes been able to compete versus female athletes? Now we're competing with the time, and now we're finally getting the exposure. And now we're going to be able to lean into that. So, really excited.
Well, she's a great representative of the women's sports, isn't she? Before the next question, I'm going to let Joe comment.
And then to add to all the great points, I think what gets lost in all this, you hear a lot of or see a lot of headlines about these massive deals that some players are allegedly signing or whatever the case, but something I think that really goes a long way for the student athletes. There's a lot of local businesses that are doing, deals that might not on the surface sound like so much, maybe a few meals a week or something for the athlete, but for a guy who's, not the starting player or a girl who's not the starter or even, whatever the case, if they're just getting a few meals a week, that goes a long way too. And there's some cases still of players. I just heard of one yesterday working a regular job, a football player, and he, has to go to practice just like everyone else, a walk-on. And, these local deals, there's ways for businesses to get involved on that level. It doesn't have to be a massive deal or whatever the case.
You bring up a good point. I was going to ask WC, what does a NIL supporter or a candidate of potential partner look like? Who could benefit from some sort of NIL arrangement in the community? And do they seem to come in at sports specific or player specific?
Those are all great questions, and I'll start with that. I'll get to the donors in a second, but let's talk about businesses, knowing this audience. The first thing is there's a big array in college sports. There's a lot of businesses that do work with like a Learfield that advertise in the stadium and on the home run fence or on the big screen. So you see those types of businesses. Many are in this room that work directly to OC, for example. They work directly with the university. So the first thing is for all those businesses that are already working with the university, the biggest value add we have is to call your local call us, or call the Gator Collective, whichever community it is. Call Ben. Because those businesses that are already working with the school, that we can double and triple the visibility of your brand, because what the school can't do that we can do is put Michaela in her uniform in front of your brand. And that can only be done through us. The school cannot do that for you. So the number one way to multiply your deal is for those Learfield businesses to call us, and we can amplify. Now there's a lot of businesses in the community that are definitely not at that level. They don't have a $150,000 a year marketing budget. You may have $1,000 or $5,000 marketing budget, and in that case, you still can come directly to us, and we can pair you with multiple athletes, whether you want all softball or you want a mix of softball and beach volleyball and football or basketball, whatever you want. We can set that up for you, and that might be a $5,000 buy or something of that nature, that we can do meet and greets in person. We can do social media. You could sponsor community events. That we customize your deal. So we never sit, and I have a full-time sales guy, Joey. He's pretty good. And when Joey sits with you in your business, it's listen to your needs, and we will customize a plan to put the best athletes in your store. So there's that piece. Now let's talk about the other end, because you talk about sports specific. A lot of the donors in the room that are probably boosters or that give to the Gator Fund, that is still a great option for people that would like to make a donation to NIL. And we've just got to get past that stigma of I don't like paying the players. And the way to get past that is what Michaela's message was, that most of her teammates are going to graduate with debt. Let's just put that out there, that out of 500 athletes at Florida State, 400 of them graduate college with debt. So let's talk about NIL. Let's just get rid of that debt first. And then for your top football and men's basketball players, they need the money. Trust me. When it's time to go play or whatever the next thing is, they really use it wisely, and then they get people like Joe to take that to the whole next level. But the biggest thing to get past is we want to pro players. Well, it's going to a pretty good cause. 9 times out of 10. 99 times out of 100.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions, so brief.
I'll just add one thing. The way to really put this in perspective for businesses in the room is there's no hotter story to tell than investing in athletes through NIL. And why do I say that? It's because, Michaela, what's your engagement rate on social, on Instagram? Like 40% probably?
Even more so. I want to say after the World Series, I gained about 20,000 followers, and then I gained probably at least 2 brands every 3 weeks. So.
And then a normal influencer's engagement rate's about 3%, which means that if you pay an influencer to market your thing and they have 1,000 followers, 30 people saw that. Whereas most athletes, their engagement rate's upwards of 20, 40%. So the same person, you're getting, 5, 10, 15x. On top of that, if you invest in athletes, the local paper is going to write about it if you do it right. or the coach is going to share it and retweet it. So when you come to me at Florida, or you come to, we're at Florida State, there's ways to have earned dollars on your dollar, right? And potentially, during the next, time Michaela's on the field, maybe the announcer says, oh yeah, she just had something at Crumble Cookies last week, yada, yada, yada. Like, that's more marketing for your company, right? And I'm not a great influencer like Michaela, but if my athletes do something, I go to the person, I say, hey, like, I'm going to share it because I want people to know I have 10,000 followers on Twitter. That's free marketing right there. You're welcome, right? And that's a way to tell their story even more. Like NIL, name like this. I'm sorry, this is a long answer. It's about storytelling, and it's about maximizing your dollars, maximize your ROI on the marketing side.
Thank you. And we're still on this topic. One of Michaela's teammates recently signed the NIL deal with a national burger chain that has a local presence. Can you describe briefly how that deal came about? Walk us through it quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's referring to our Culver's deal, which is a great company. They're soon to have a second business here in Tallahassee. So we did, just to get the business owners thinking, Culver's dessert deal is like a Dairy Queen thing. It's a concrete mixer. It's a big thing of ice cream and lots of toppings, right? It's like a blizzard. And so we've done 2 flavors of the month. Cam Smith from baseball did the first one, and McKenna Reed did the second one. And you can check it out on social. We've thrown the whole thing and create all this content, like literally the drive-through window. There's posters all over the restaurant. Like if you walk in, you can't miss it. And it's a whole month-long promotion for a concrete mixer. But it's not so much that it's the dessert. It's the quality of the marketing that you get. And I urge you just to take a look at it on social, on Instagram. Just take a look on Rising Spear or McKenna or Cam's page. You could, no offense to the marketing firms in the room, but you might spend $20,000 on what we did with our staff just to create the video, just to put that in perspective.
Thank you. Michaela, some say that NIL deals distract student athletes from their academic and athletic program responsibilities. Have you experienced this? How do you find the balance? And is there any support for student athletes in this regard from either the university or the collectives?
I think anything good is going to take some time, right? And that's the really cool thing is I have people to my left and my right in my corner here that help me delegate that time. I can't oversee every single little thing, but I guarantee you that what I do is I'm going to give my best content and I'm going to give the people that I'm working with me. And that's what NIL is about. My name, image, and likeness, and who I am as a person and how I'm putting myself out there on social media. And now, again, I can't do it all on my own. So it is the time piece, right? But every student athlete can say that they have managed from anything, personal, home life, school, and their sport for years before college.
You'll be on social media anyway, right?
Yes. It's going to happen. It's bound to happen. This, again, just like puts my foot into the room a little bit easier, right? So, again, the time management piece is something that's always going to be a personal thing. And I think it is up to colleges to recruit people, not just athletes. And I think my coach does a great job of it. And I think my team, I think Will can speak for it. I think we're really, really good just because we're really good at time management. And personally, I think the support piece, again, working with Rising Spear has been one of the biggest things I've been able to do. Just because if I have any questions, like they're there, text, call away. I was texting Will. I was over in New York about a month ago meeting some people from CBS Sports and just, again, like touching in those of where I'm at, what I'm doing, how many people can I connect with, other people that he might know there that I connect with and potentially get myself an NIL deal or just network. So
thank you. Mr. Hall, if a player works with 3 different sponsors or brands, are those 3 separate contracts with the player? Is it a single contract between the player and the collective? How are the deals with players typically structured, and who manages the deal through completion?
Sure. So for Rising Spear Gold, the for-profit side, usually what we do is kind of have a general contract with the athlete, kind of establishing our relationship, including a grant of rights, general terms, and then when deals present themselves or specific opportunities, we'll do an addendum or a new contract for that. And part of the reason for that is, there's certain issues we want to make sure are addressed. So for example, like a social media deal, it's very important for our athletes to know that the Federal Trade Commission has guidelines on social media influencers. So one of the biggest examples in the news is FTX, the Bitcoin group that just went completely kaput and had commercials with Tom Brady and everyone there. All the people that promoted FTX are being sued. Basically, you pushed me to this Bitcoin marketplace that was kind of a house of cards. And our athletes need to know not only protecting a rising spear, but how to protect themselves for that. Taxes are another big issue we always want to make sure we're very upfront with athletes about, because, all the deals that, especially a social media deal, something like that, these are all 1099 type situations. So these are not employees and nothing's being withheld, right? And I don't know about y'all, but when I was 19, if you gave me $500, I'd have probably spent $500, right? And so we want to make sure we're getting W-9s immediately. We want to make sure people understand, like, you need to withhold some of this money or be prepared at the end of the day to pay the tax obligations that, frankly, none of us are worried about when we're in college, but are real for these athletes. So, again, making sure they understand, accept the specific terms, but also are aware of some of those general issues. We always kind of try to make sure are top of mind for us.
Follow up on that, is there any recourse for either party for non-performance?
Sure. For just like in a contract, you certainly, if you have a breach, that can create a scenario. It creates kind of a unique situation here because, if you are a local business and, luckily we work with very responsible athletes, such as Michaela, and we work very hard to, we have a contract. For example, if a business comes to us like a Crumble Cookies, we have a contract with Michaela and with Crumble Cookies about what Michaela's responsibilities are, but also what we'll do and what the company will do. Frankly, if a local business ever got in a bad place with a local prominent athlete, well, do they really want to sue them? Is that really in your business interest to be in a public spat with a local Florida State athlete or again as well? So there's some of those business considerations that thankfully we haven't had to deal with, but the athletes certainly need to know that, yes, if they did breach, it's possible there could be repercussions, and we try to, again, build that all in up front so there's protections for us, for them, and for everybody.
Thank you. Joe, some say that free agency has been introduced into the collegiate sports world. What are some of the current factors involved in determining the value of NIL for individual players, and do you see any alignment or universal guidelines coming?
So from an athlete standpoint, I think a big factor to evaluate is, one, how's the fan base in that certain area that they're looking to attend school. I think that's a big part because, let's say, if they're performing at a high level, they're able to leverage that and, work with those highly engaged fans. Here in Tallahassee, we're lucky to have such engaged fans, same in Gainesville too. Whereas in some cities that are much larger, there's a million other things to do as well. And, some people are at the beach instead of going to a game or, So I think from a student athlete standpoint, I would want to go to a market, like in Tallahassee, where you can really leverage those relationships with the local businesses and the fan base. So, I would say in the real world, people look at salary, they look at, as far as looking for a job, they look at where's the right fit, for them and their family. From a student athlete standpoint, I think their success in real life, as far as from an educational standpoint, should be at the top of the priority list, where they're going to have the best opportunity to perform on the field or on the court or whatever the case. And then, yes, I think, they should look at least at the fan bases and, see if that's the right opportunity for them too, to really leverage their own name, image, and likeness. And then as far as the guidelines, I don't have a specific answer for that right now. I know there's a lot of legislation out there, but my hope is that whatever the outcome is, it's really catered to the best interests of the student athletes. I see a lot of proposed legislation with uniform contracts, which I think is crazy because each business relationship's different, whether it's with a Nike or a local business, it's not going to look the same. And then disclosing every agreement to brands or companies will not be okay with that, in my opinion. So as far as the guidelines, it's I just hope they keep the student athletes' best interests at heart.
Okay, and Michaela, how do you receive partnership opportunities? How are they presented to you, and how do you evaluate them? If you can answer this briefly, and can you give us some examples of the type of companies you've worked with?
Yeah, so a lot of people have either reached out to Rising Spear directly. I've had many people reach out to me on my social media directly through DMing me. I've given people my phone number to connect them, or I will email them and connect them to Rising Spear, again, helping me on that time management piece. And just to give an example for people that I've worked with, starting from last fall, I've been with Taco Bell. I did a Live Moss deal. I went to the football game in New Orleans. That was a blast. I've done a handful of camps. I did the thing with Crumble Cookies recently. And there's a couple more on the way here, but again, just helping me out with the time management piece and connecting me with a lot of people.
Yeah, and how's it feel to be up there with Seminoles? Yeah. I think you're holding your own.
I mean, honestly, it's one of those things that's like we talked about before is there's places where we can sit down and grow together. And joking aside, it's tough, but like, I'm on a monthly call with 40 people in my role from universities all across the country. So this is something that we speak on every month, because at the end of the day, it's about our athletes and making sure that their opportunities are maximized and they're doing it the right way and they don't lose eligibility. So it's good. It's tough, but it's good.
Real good. My question for you is, the Florida legislature was one of the first in the country to establish some NIL legislation. The first attempt was ultimately viewed to be too restrictive compared to the latter states that came behind. In this last session, some changes were made to the initial legislation. Can you highlight those recent changes and how that's benefited the Florida universities?
Yeah, so Florida was one of the first states to say, all right, we're doing this July 1st, 2021. And it was kind of like, because we were the first to do it, we were ahead of the game, right? But because there was legislation, there was restrictions. And there's states still right now that don't have state legislation. So they're the ones that, their schools can just kind of look at the NCAA's opportunities and kind of find their niche in it. So, a team led by Chip LaMarca is who was the leader on amending the guidance. It gave us, our coaches, an opportunity to kind of at least communicate and open up the doors to allow our athletes to sit in a room with a business, or allow our, a little more fluid conversations with our collective, and that's a win. I will say that, there's going to be a lot. There's 3 or 4 bills right now moving in the national space, and when it comes to state level, I can say this with confidence. I'm not representing my university, but I will say, when it comes to the laws that are in Texas that may be more progressive than the laws in Florida, I don't believe there's much enforcement when it comes to the regulations. So these laws that are being created, the guidance that's being given, you're not allowed to do this if you're a school in Florida. That's great, but if Florida is trying to keep up with Alabama, or Florida State's trying to keep up with Clemson, is the Florida legislature going to come down on our schools for trying to be in the same level as them on a competitive standpoint, right? So my assumption is no. However, it would be nice for, there to be some uniformity, not with contracts, I agree, but hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. We're running out of time, so brief, Ray.
Florida's tried very hard to stay on the cutting edge, but the edge kind of keeps getting more cutting. You're seeing, Texas has basically made it illegal for the NCAA to enforce its laws. Missouri has basically said only kids who sign with in-state schools who are in high school can sign NIL deals. So there's a reason you're seeing this race towards federal preemption of this issue, because states keep trying to line up.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. So in Florida right now, our athletes in high school are not allowed to do NIL deals, marketing deals. However, if you are a father or a mother of a child who is a YouTuber at the age of 6, who at the age of 16 wants to play softball, tough luck, because you've been doing YouTube for 6 years. How is that a fair thing? Also, again, going back to enforcement at scale, I know there's high school athletes right now that do NIL deals, so that's another thing. Who's enforcing that at scale? Also, that's under Florida High School Athletic Association. If you're at a private high school that's not under that umbrella, you can do NIL deals. So there's a lot of just inequity when it comes to those regulations that just needs to be brought to light. And then last thing, going back to the regulations, it made financial literacy and things mandatory for 5 hours a year for athletes, which is great. Luckily, I know Florida State and Florida have been doing that regardless since 1979, so that's a win. But I will say that legislation should be for all students, not just student athletes.
All right, well, let's go to rapid fire answers on these last few, and anybody from the panel can take them, but just one person. Some universities, starting with Texas A&M, have brought their NIL efforts directly in-house. Is this a trend? Is this what we see it going everywhere, despite the rumors from the IRS and different little things? Anybody want to take a stab at it? Ray?
I suppose I should start. Okay. So, let's dive. So that's a great question. So the state, in our state currently, that's not on the table. The basic deal is this. The NCAA says that, number one, the schools cannot directly pay the players. And number two, that the schools cannot, and then there was an employment issue. So those are really the two issues. And do I see that as the way it's going? Probably at some point in time, we're going to get there, but I don't see a time where, for example, the local booster organizations are just taking over all things NIL, particularly the commercial deals. Like, even if the donation side, I could see that sooner, but I don't see people working in, like Hugh's role in a development office, brokering deals with Whataburger for Michaela or on social media. So no, I don't see that.
Okay. Has the addition of the NIL helped in the retention of players? Has it delayed some of the athletes from going pro, or have the potential to do so? Very quick answers.
Yeah. I think so. From that standpoint, I think it's helpful to the student athletes knowing that there is a market for them if they do come back to school. So, but ultimately, I mean, if you're a guy that's projected to go number one, you're probably going to go pro. I mean, that's a substantial amount of money, but, for someone else who can come back to school, maybe improve their draft stock, and, it seems like there will be a robust market for them too, for NIL deals. I think it makes sense, and they can finish their degree as well.
All right, thank you. I'm going to do a question, go all the way down the table. We'll start with you, Joe. If you're better than one or two sentences, I'm going to cut you off there. Let's go down the table. What is one thing you would most like to see change regarding the rules or practices of NIL?
Just more common practice across state lines.
Okay, Will?
Around international athletes participate, because right now it's a violation of the visa restrictions to accept NIL payment.
Oh, great answer. Michaela?
I definitely think there's going to have to be a way to protect women's sports within all of this, so I don't know how they're going to do it, but definitely going to have to.
The data, I'm right with Michaela, and the answer is data, that not necessarily by name, but we need a national repository of what athletes are actually making in these sports, so that we can get that piece right and make sure that we're doing exactly that, taking care of everyone.
I want to Mike. Go ahead. Bull.
They took the top of 9 things, so I'll just say more support from fans and alumni to buy into NIL, because that's why we're here.
Okay. How can people get involved, that fan or supporter, with NIL briefly?
Well, if you're with Florida State, you can talk to this guy. If you're with Florida, you can talk to myself. Every university has someone at this point, either in-house or outside in the collective space, that they can work with.
Okay. We have lots more questions and very little time, so I'm going to ask one more time down the table is, what do you guys feel has been the greatest benefits that have resulted from the NIL rights being instituted? Start with you, Ben, and come back to me.
Starts and ends with opportunity. Opportunity for athletes to start businesses, work with you guys, pay for school. So just that's starts and ends with opportunity.
I'll just say exposure and being able to have better engagement with the fans and community.
I mean, it's really hard to follow up those two, but again, the exposure piece as a female athlete is big.
I think, as was stated earlier, to have athletes who previously were struggling and now be able to possibly buy a house at age 20, possibly fully fund a Roth IRA at age 20, it just gives an opportunity to avoid debt, build generational wealth, and change lives.
Leveling the playing field with student athletes and just common students who may be on academic scholarship who can earn however much money they want. Athletes now can too.
And I'll give this panel a round of applause first. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what an insightful and thought-provoking discussion we've had today on name, image, and likeness in collegiate sports. I want to express my sincere gratitude to our esteemed panelists for sharing their expertise and their experiences and diverse perspectives. And it's been fun to be up here with you. I'm going to skip all of this and say, again, thanks to the audience, those here in attendance, and those who are watching from the podcast. And in closing, I'm confident that with open minds and collaborative efforts and a shared commitment to the well-being of the student athletes, we can harness the potential of the NIL rights to elevate collegiate sports to new heights and excellence. Thank you once again for being part of this essential discussion. Stay tuned to the ever-changing landscape of college sports. It's captivating to watch. And on behalf of the Economic Club of Florida and the Florida Public Relations Association, safe travels and have a good day.
Not so good. Give him another round of applause. Good job.
You've been listening to a panel discussion on the evolving rules allowing college athletes to be paid by marketing their name, image, and likeness. Presented before the Economic Club of Florida on July 27, 2023 in Tallahassee, Florida. For more information on the individuals you've heard participating, visit our podcast webpage by going to economic-club.com, then choosing the Speakers tab, and then Podcast and Summaries. The Economic Club of Florida promotes interest and enlightenment in important economic, political, and social issues of the day. To learn more, including how to become a member, visit our website at economic-club.com. This program was recorded at the Florida State University Alumni Center in Tallahassee, Florida.